Now remember, this is an 8-mark question. So we've done the table, we've done the comparison between them. But I would on the bottom put a concluding sentence saying that there are obvious similarities or there are obvious differences in these two. Round it off that way. This is another way of answering your question. It's worth it. I would advise people to use as much of that space as possible. From past experience, I would not be asking for extra paper to put it on though, because I see people wasting time on that when they could be getting mole marks in another area. So that's my best advice to you on those extended response ones. Go back to your verb. Have I compared? Right, maybe I need to let the marker know. Treat your marker as somebody who doesn't really know a lot about the subject. So finalise it that way by saying these are the similarities and differences between the two in that table form. Now we're to the option section of the paper. The option, please, please, please do the one that you have been taught. You will have the jargon, the Community and Family Studies jargon, that's necessary to get the maximum marks. Don't look at another one and say, oh, but I could do that, because you will only be giving information of anybody else that walks in off the street. You won't have the information that your teacher will have given you following the syllabus outlines. So extremely important to answer the option that you have practiced to answer. Usually there is a short answer, 3 marks or 4 marks, then maybe a 6 or a 7 for the section, and then maybe the last one, or sometimes we get a 12, but more often a 15 marker in that one. So divide your time appropriately, please. Often they can be related, the sections. Remember I said that earlier in the presentation. If it's related, make sure that you can use an example that you can then enumerate on if that's what the question's asking for. This is where you get a writing booklet to write into. Now, don't be tempted, as I have seen, on people using 3 or 4 booklets for 15 marks. That usually means that they've compromised their time somewhere else. It's meant to be an extended response, yes, and it is meant to answer the question that's asked. But usually it will be an analysis or a critical justification or something like that. So yes, it's a higher order one, and it is probably where the band 6s are determined. But make sure that you can answer that. I still prefer my students to use an essay style for that, because generally it is that higher order thinking that they're requesting for that. So you could use graphics in that section of the question if you wanted to. You might be able to put a mind map in, for example. You might be able to use something that is really related to that section, but put it in a way that's meaningful. Make sure it relates to the question that's asked and that you are answering the question that's asked. I've repeated that many times, but it is where the marks are gained or lost on this exam paper. So you're in the extended response question. I hope by now that your timing is right, that you've got sufficient time to answer that properly. But again, it's 25 marks in total, so don't sacrifice your whole paper because of that one. Be prepared for it well, please. Think about the areas of study you've done and where you feel most confident. Often you are able to choose the response that you want to give depending on the kind of question that's asked there. So look at it really carefully and analyse what that question's asking you to do. It's really important to be able to do, I think, an introduction, a body and a conclusion if you're doing an extended response, and round the answer off with that conclusion at the end of it. This is what will make you a little bit apart from the average answer. So put in as much information as is required from the question, and hopefully that will maximise your result. The next topic I'd like to talk to you about is study skills for community and family studies. There are some areas that you really have to rote learn. You know, you learnt your 2 times tables. Well, if you are thinking about it, things like factors affecting access to resources in groups in context, that they're often asked questions about that. Now, my belief is that if you can use mnemonics, this is a great aid for remembering the points you need to do. The factors affecting, of course, are education, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, location, age and disability. What a mouthful. But if you think of every ethnic girl should locate a dog and remember what each of those stand for, you know the factors that affect access to resources in groups in context in your required area of study. Because every is education, ethnic is ethnicity and culture, girl is gender, should is socioeconomic status, locate is location, A is age, and dog is disability. That mnemonic works beautifully for it. Mostly students of mine have worked their own mnemonics out, things that help them to remember what is required in the syllabus. I always teach the management model as POE, planning, organising, implementing and evaluating your resources to achieve your goals. We do a diagram, we put those words down or those letters down, and students remember that that's a management process. Just on that though, management strategies are quite different. They are how, when, where, what and who. So be clear in your mind when you are doing these study skills what you're actually trying to remember. Because if you do that, you understand the content and you will give back the answers that the examiners want. So use them as study aids, but make sure they're meaningful to you. You're the person that's got to write these answers. So you need to understand why you've given yourself these guidelines and how they're going to be beneficial to you. I find often students confuse management theories and management strategies. So just keep that one in mind when you're doing it. And another tip for groups in context, we have to do so many groups, we have to do 3 in detail. If you can use those detailed groups to answer your questions when the questions for groups in context come on the paper, you will get a better mark. I always say, think of Auntie Flo, whoever Auntie Flo is. She's my mystical person, but she's an aged person in the community. So, okay, she has reduced mobility. She doesn't hear as well as she used to. She's not earning an income anymore. You know a lot about the aged if you can relate it to somebody individual. The same thing if it's the youth. Okay, you think about your own age group. Don't think about it as that group in the syllabus. Think about the people you know that actually fit into the chronically ill, for example, another one of our groups. But please, please, please don't make up your own group. I have seen this at marking. We have people like the Teenage Mothers in Jail group, which do not exist in our syllabus, so please don't ever refer to that. Make sure you reveal your syllabus knowledge by using the correct titles for the groups that are in the syllabus. And it's gay and lesbian, and it's not the homosexual group. Remember that? That's really important to use the correct terminology when you're answering your questions. Finally, to community and family studies students, I hope you get the exam paper you can do well in. Think about it, all the very best of luck, and I hope there's lots of band 6s from your school. Thank you very much today.